Everyone, welcome, jump in. Welcome to the session. I'm really looking forward to this one because I've known Derek for a long time, and boy, we've had some discussions on this very topic. So I can't wait to see him lay this all out in front of you. My name is Bob Miller. I am CEO of Global Data Systems, which is an MSP, MSSP out of Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm also the founder of IR Game. And it is my pleasure to introduce Derek Gabriel, and I'm going to turn the stage over to you, Derek, and you go.
Thank you. Aloha, friends. Good morning. I just realized that I did not test the sharing thing. So let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Slides. Sweet. All right. I am Derek Gabriel. I'm the CEO of Ignite Solutions Group. Today, my presentation for you is breaking up with your PSA, how Dynamics 365 can streamline your MSP operations, sales, and service. Oh, my little clicker don't work. Shame on me. All right. Damn it. So, okay. Built it as a PowerPoint, saved it as a PDF, so I don't have any transitions, which is going to throw me off, but that's okay. We're going to do this anyway. So I've been living in Hawaii since 2002. For those of you that don't know me, I started my first IT company in 2005. And then this past fall, I started a new AI company to do AI consulting, specifically around Microsoft Copilot. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later and why that makes sense. And then a couple of things that I've done in the past few years is some mini MBAs to give myself a little bit more credibility when I do some talking engagements like this. So that's me. And at Ignite, basically, in the last few years, we made this decision that first started out as an unconscious decision, but then became a conscious decision to move away from some of the traditional PSA tools. And, starting out roughly 20 years ago in IT services, been around the block, aging myself, of course. But, in the early days, PSA used to cost, 100 grand. There was basically two players in the market. It was pretty crazy. So we've come a long way. But the challenge is some of those tools that were around 20 years ago are still around. So basically, I'm going to walk you through this journey, why we broke up at the PSA, how we built something better with Dynamics, and what you can learn from my experience. I'm going to be heavy on the why. It's not a technical presentation, but hopefully we'll end up with some resources for you that you can start your own journey. So let's just level set on PSA. I'm sure everyone understands professional service as automation. Basically, backbone for every MSP, tickets, billing, time tracking, resource management, all that good stuff, right? Autotask, ConnectWise, Synchro, Enable. We all know the names. There's some modern ones that try to be better. So to give you all some PTSD, I put up a picture of the Autotask API user interface for when you want to integrate something and you have to go in there and start clicking all these buttons. So, I call PSAs one-trick ponies, but siloed, won't talk to your CRM, very difficult for managing the sales pipeline. Again, clunky APIs, limited integrations, license creep. You've got to buy add-ons, you got to buy other tools. And then, I heard a statistic in the last couple of years in talking with different vendors that 60 to 80% of licenses go unused. And so, we got to a point where we had dozens of vendors that we were trying to deal with and integrate and make sure we were using and then securing and all of that other stuff. And so ultimately, the bottom line is it's just a poor user experience, both for internal and external participants, customers, and whatnot. So, and we've all been there, right? Switching between tools for quotes or opportunities, the ticket management, sales and service teams aren't aligned. Like all of these problems stem from these challenges. So what is the solution? Why is Dynamics 365 different? Well, this unified platform. I'm about to blow your mind. This is the current layout of the Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem. All of these different components. There's a product called Guides, connected store if you got physical retail, supply chain management, human resources, all of these different components. You probably, unless you keep up with Dynamics on a day-to-day basis, you probably don't know half of these exist. So today's Dynamics is not yesterday's or your father's Dynamics or the Dynamics of our childhood. So that is key. And what really let's drill this down a little bit and get out of the forest and get a little bit more towards the things I think are core to what makes Dynamics powerful. It would be these 5 services, right? So sales, marketing, customer service modules, field service module if you're managing folks in the field, and your customer insights options there. Those are probably the ones most people should look at. This is the heavy core of what we use from Dynamics. And then you sort of zoom out again a little bit, and this is Microsoft's big ecosystem. And this is really key, right? Because all of the different products that we've used along the way end up getting consolidated when there's different purchases. And even though a vendor promises they're going to do an integration for us, they're still running separate products. And so Microsoft's Power Platform being, the level set area that you get to work in within the Microsoft platform, you can bring your data back and forth. If you want to do something like build a real-time dashboard with Power BI, you need some reporting, you want to, layer Copilot and AI on top of that. Now that's all across the board. And the beauty of it is, I think, is the one user interface, right? Microsoft's got an interface that they've built across all of these. It's very standard. It's pretty much like, once you've used Office, you know how to use any of the Microsoft products. So that's fantastic. Of course, AI is solving that for us by making conversation the interface. But, you reduce training. And I think one of the, bigger benefits that you don't realize until you get into it is the ability that you're selling a lot of these products to your customers. And so as you and your team develop experience using these tools, that's going to translate into new service avenues and advice that you can give a client instead of, it's got to be another product that we go and sell. So, all right. Our decision and our timeline. Basically what happened is probably if I go way back in time, we installed CRM 4. Used to have that SQL server and all that fun garbage, actual servers to run stuff on. But knowing that there was a couple of products that Microsoft, and typical Microsoft fashion, right? These were all acquisitions. I grew up in North Dakota, where Great Plains was actually developed, and so knowing that these products existed, I'd always in the back of my mind thought, well, why can't I use some of these same products that we sell? And the problem was, it always took more time to customize things. And, as a typical CRM, it gives you a base layer of where to start. You get some entity objects. And if your business process isn't super generic, then you've got to do some customization. And so, the way we used to customize software, and you'd have to bust things out, and you'd have to actually have some software development skills. And so what was low-hanging fruit for us was sales and marketing. And so, over the years, our PSA choice would ebb and flow every couple of years. I always had this sort of Jerry Maguire moment every year where I'd be like, there's got to be a better way. Is the guy might have the conversation none of us are willing to talk about. And I'd go out, it's November, December, contract season, start evaluating options. And we'd be like, oh, I think it's time to switch to something else. And then we would switch and we'd recruit it instantly. And, but yeah, so when we took a big focus on sales, probably 21, 22-ish, Microsoft had a promo. If you had 10 seats of the Dynamics customer service platform. It's a SKU that no longer exists. They would give you the Microsoft marketing add-on. And so to take advantage of that, we implemented Microsoft marketing. And that is essentially like HubSpot. It allow us to do a couple of different things when it came to outbound marketing and manage our lead flow. And so as we were making that investment in sales, we started really seeing the benefits on the marketing side and implementing on the sales side. And at that point, basically, it got to the point where it was like, we went from those disconnected leads to automatically creating opportunities based on, webinar attendance, things of that nature. We were doing, calls and set up the workflow. So, got a call on Tuesday, we're going to mail out a letter on Wednesday, and all of that would be automated. And we'd just have to click some buttons in the logic rules. So then the decision to use sales so then all of the AI starts to show up, right? Microsoft Copilot comes out. And the first place Microsoft put Copilot was they put Copilot in dynamic sales. And so we're getting meeting recaps, we're getting insights on nudging our customers in the pipeline, and it's becoming so beneficial on the sales side. And like all I can think about is every time I got to log into my other apps and be like, man, my ticket management sucks. We keep missing stuff. Our customers hate it as much as we do. There's got to be a better way. And we started buying all of these add-ons to make ticket management and ticket lifestyle and case management easier for us and easier for our customers. And all I could think about was every time I was talking with Microsoft or seeing a Microsoft Sizzle video about what Copilot was going to do, and I would see it in the service side, and I would be like, man, we should use that. And finally, it just got to the point where there was pressure financially and some other things going on with the MSP. And we were like, we've just got to ditch costs wherever we can. So we started slashing and burning. I actually gotten to the point where I thought I was going to just get rid of the MSP. I was tired. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And we slashed and burned, getting ready for exit. And finally was like, let's just implement Microsoft Dynamics. We've got the licensing for it. It's built in here. That'll get us by to the next phase. And it worked out so well. Things got fun again. And sales cycles improved. Ticket stuff got easy. And we wanted to improve, customize something. We didn't have to wait for a vendor's timeline. We didn't have to wait for a roadmap. If we had a whim and said, what, this process takes too many clicks, or wouldn't it be great if we could have this information surfaced immediately when we were engaged with the customer? We could just pop open Power Automate. We could go into a particular flow that manages this particular process, or create a new one to manage a new process. And then where it used to require the heavy development time, we were able to streamline that using AI. So AI assisted development, as Microsoft pushed that out through all the products, that got much better and really increased the speed. And so we had this really quick, rapid iteration that we could do. And that made it a lot more fun. And I'll give you some sort of examples of that. This is one of my favorite new features that came out in the last couple of months. It's called Smart Paste. And you can't see the animation because, again, I'm an idiot and I converted this to a PDF instead of trying to use PowerPoint. But you can copy and paste everything on the right, and you go over on the left, and AI will analyze your clipboard and put it in all of your fields. And it's freaky accurate. You can click one button to accept all of them, or you can sort of choose them. And it's simple little sort of items like this. But what's really powerful about that is it flows throughout all of these tools, right? And so if we want to make a custom application in Power Apps that we use when we're engaging with our customers, because the layout isn't quite what we want in a certain way, in Dynamics. We can open Power Automate, and then we can manage and manipulate data at that point. But we're not necessarily having to go down the rabbit hole of actual development. Here's an example of what's called an AI, running an AI prompt inside a Power Automate flow. So for example, we use a particular tool that sends emails, and we used to have to parse those emails in a very, old school, idiosyncratic kind of way. And basically at one point we were like, I'm sick of having to error check these all the time. Let's have AI help us. And so we can go in and say, hey, we need to extract this data that comes from this email. We need to turn it into JSON. So we go in, pick, convert it to JSON. Here's sort of what the layout of the email would look like. And, sometimes there's a cell phone, sometimes there's not a cell phone, right? You got to have some logic for that, or you just got to have AI that understands how to interpret that. So you get some instructions, give it a sample entity, tell it what you want it to do. Microsoft puts in 80% of this as boilerplate. You just customize it for yourself, and boom, it's going to return out some JSON for you. And then you can use that in subsequent steps in the flow. And now you've gotten a whole new automation without having to rely on developers or technicians, and you didn't need to wait for a vendor to roadmap it. So what we learned, basically, biggest takeaways: don't rebuild your PSA. A lot of it's not necessary. We started simple, layer on functionality. You can have an idea on a Thursday, how you can improve something, implement it over the weekend, and then embrace the platform mentality, right? So Power Platform is an expansive tool that allows you to do so much and contain all of your data. And the beauty of these low code, no code systems is it extrapolates a lot of the bigger challenges, security, things that, you're using all the same Microsoft security that you use throughout the Microsoft platform. So there isn't anything special you've got to do in addition to some of that same, user management and rights management that you typically do. So I would say start with customer service or sales. If you're a real small MSP, you can work with Business Central. Business Central even has invoicing and payment in there. All of the AI is sprinkled throughout that. People can send you an email that says, hey, I need a proposal for X, Y, and Z product. And if you've got all that loaded up in your system, the Copilot will recommend a response, or will recommend a proposal that you can send out. And we've got bots now that are popping up for all different kind of little processes. So one of the things that was sort of a challenge for us was that we were like, we play that ticket ping pong game where we always had to ask people, when's their availability if we're going to schedule, a call or remote session, whatever. And, they get busy and they don't follow up, and we got tickets that are 2 weeks old. So there's no default mechanism to manage the follow-up and sort of that cycle. And sure enough, we go in and we can build ourselves a flow, and we started working on that. Well, Microsoft announced that they're going to do an AI agent that's specifically for follow-up, and they just launched it. Actually, we implemented it 2 days ago. We configure a status change, we configure an age of a ticket, and it goes in and it'll draft an email for you. Copilot suggests an email template and customizes it, and all we've got to do is click send, verify that everything looks good, and then again, chat interface with customers. They can come to us via email, they can come to us via phone. And another bot that we've got in that flow that was just made available is a ticket management bot. So essentially, if I open an email from somebody and they're asking for help, they didn't put it through our correct, workflow to get it into support, I can just open that up. I can convert that to a case. AI will summarize. AI will, fill out the fields of what it might be, a request, probably, all that jazz. Just speeds things up. So that's Microsoft's, constant iteration on pushing value down the pipeline of their products, and leaning on the Power Platform is just super valuable. And then the other thing that's, pretty important that I would say is you're not alone, right? I am constantly running into other partners and other companies and other people in our space that have been wanting to do these similar things or are doing these similar things when I'm at a conference. So there's a lot going on when it comes to folks who are working in and with Dynamics. And then on top of that, in the Microsoft ecosystem, there are partners. That first circle with all of the 18 different products, there's a specialist somewhere out in the world. We talk to people in Europe, we talk to people in Asia. There are partners everywhere that specialize in these. So you can say, hey, I'm a Microsoft partner too. And Microsoft really pushes in the partner network with the P2P or the peer-to-peer and partner-to-partner work. And so if you're having a challenge with something, you reach out to another Microsoft partner, and oftentimes they will sort of give you the friends and family discount to help you out. So, and the community is super strong. You can go post something in the Dynamics community and you're going to get an answer sometimes within a couple of hours. So that's pretty powerful. So Dynamics 365 is not just an upgrade. It's a whole new relationship. And this is sort of the how of what partners can do and how partners should do this. The key, I think, is leaning into the Microsoft relationship, right? So the statistic that Microsoft will frequently cite, and other like IDC will cite, is that a Microsoft partner, for every $1 of Microsoft product sold, there's an additional earn of up to $10 on average. Ours is actually higher than that. I'd say that for every $1 of Microsoft we sell, we earn probably about $20. And that's additional add-on value that we add, right? That's our services, and that's our consulting, and that's all the project work. And those are the things that we do that are driven by the Microsoft relationship. Basically, in the peer groups and whatnot, we would always hear, raise your rates, raise your rates. And we did, we raised our rates quite frequently. We're one of the always, we're in a market where things are expensive. And so we've always had good pricing power. But when I would talk to a customer and say, hey, we've got to talk about raising your rate, they would be like, oh, well, we got to have a conversation. We're going to need to do some negotiating. But if I called them up and I said, hey, we need to start utilizing a different Microsoft license, or Microsoft, when CSP transition came through and Microsoft changes their pricing structure, we'd say, hey, there's going to be an uplift on Microsoft side. They haven't raised rates in 5 years. No one ever pushed back. So we found that taking a dependency on Microsoft's licensing actually made us more profitable, because we didn't have a second vendor in there that we had to pay. But Microsoft's revamped the partner network. So if you're not super familiar, if you're selling Microsoft 365 and you're not in the Power Platform, you're not looking at Dynamics, you're not looking at any of these tools, you're missing out on opportunity to, again, translate your knowledge, your experience with these tools to helping your customers, empower them to do more things. So in the basic tier, Action Pack's gone, Gold, Silver's gone, and you may or may not be familiar with that. But the AI Partner Program now has 3 sort of tiers that you get into, and Partner Launch Benefit, Success Core Benefit, and Success Expanded Benefits. And essentially, you sign up as a partner. If you don't have a specialization yet, you have to pick one of these. And the beauty of it is this is where you get your internal use rights, right? And so all I've copied on this particular slide is the licensing that applies to Dynamics and Power Platform. And so Partner Launch, I want to say, is $350, $400. Success is $800-900, and Success Expanded is like $3,000, $3,500, something like that. But if you look at the licensing that you get, this doesn't include the Azure licensing. They give you some credits for that. That alone pays significantly. But you can essentially, at any point in the Microsoft Partner Program, and if you're a Microsoft partner already, you've got the licenses, and I bet you're just not using them. So that's the how you can get going. And that is the end of my presentation. Woo. Sponsors, of course, we love them.
100%. So, Derek, the thing we talked about, because you were saying at the beginning, you had tool sprawl, right? I mean, that was one of the issues that was causing you so much stress in your MSP. Not calling out exact numbers, but what percentage of expense did you wind up cutting out of your tool costs when you just decided to take this other path, to use the Microsoft ecosystem?
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night. We dropped at at the peak. I don't remember the exact number. I've got some spreadsheets somewhere that have that out. I should dig that out and look at it someday. We have essentially 5 vendors right now. Primarily security vendors that are, our outsourced security team, and everything else that and just a call, a remote tool, uh, and everything else is Microsoft. And so we dropped, gosh, the uh, probably like 20% was able to, expense reduction
Yeah,
and tool costs. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it's very, very significant. It was so significant, in fact, that when this, so we had sales and marketing, and we were doing that, and that came with its
mhm,
own, there's other stuff there, right? We SDRs,
right,
all that jazz, leads, marketing costs. But the big one was when we did the customer service portion of it. And so we implemented that at the beginning of 2024. And in a fit of rage, I cussed a lot, and we literally just, today's the day we're done. Didn't even migrate any data. It was like, just screw it. At this point, we don't. It's so siloed. Didn't give a shit anymore, right? It's like it's useless to us because it's in 6 different products, and so we sort of started from scratch.
yeah,
And no one said anything. No customer like threw a tantrum. No one got pissed off. And we had a tool that we use with our customers that's on the endpoint that helps them sort of, it checks if the machine needs to be rebooted, just random shit like that before a ticket goes in. And so we were able
right,
to connect to that same workflow. So from a customer's perspective, it was pretty transparent. But it made things so much more, profitable, because we didn't have those tool costs, that at the end of 2024 going into 2025 this year, we actually went to our long-term customers, and I think the first time ever, we offered to lower their rate. And it was a little bit of a shell game, because what we did is we moved. We convinced them that they needed to spend more Microsoft licensing, because that's a story for another day, of how we don't use a
yeah,
PSA or an RMM either, right? We use Intune and manage all of the Microsoft tools on behalf of our licenses, or on behalf of our clients. All of our clients are licensed, and pretty much 100% cloud. I was joking with someone the other day, when we were having coffee, that I don't even think we manage any servers, to be honest with you. But when we were like, okay, hey, we're going to lower your seat cost by $5, but I need you to buy another Microsoft license that's going to cost you $5 per user. And so, there's some weird math in there, because we do get a kickback. We get, there's a margin on that, and whatnot. So it looked like we're really lowering our rates, you know, but we're also gaining a little bit extra margin on it. So anyway, it was that lucrative of a change, that
right.
it really allowed us to have some interesting conversations with customers. And you know, even a $5 price decrease, for 100 employees, that adds up real quick. And it's just an interesting dynamic when you tell a customer that you're lowering their price. It's something that doesn't happen very often. So it really drove home kind of a different um, behavior. We just, everyone just treated us differently, during those conversations. So
Yeah, well, I mean, having met you and then listening to your story, I mean, I got you involved with our MSP, right, to kind of talk about the ecosystem, and we adopted that same strategy that I think, unless somebody's paying attention really closely here, it's important for them to understand is that what you did was separate the Microsoft licensing price away from your managed service price,
yeah,
because a lot of people bundle those together,
yeah,
but the bind they get into is that Microsoft's constantly changing the price of those damn licenses and what's
yep,
involved in them, what's in them, right?
yep,
So, your advice about, well, no, what I did was I isolated. Now the managed service cost is the license, the appropriate license necessary for it, and then the managed service is a separate line item,
yep,
because Otherwise, it looked like you were always raising your rates when all you were trying to do was cover your costs on the Microsoft license,
100%.
which didn't have
Yeah,
didn't
and
have anything to do with you, right?
right. And back during the CSP transition was sort of the first thing where Microsoft sort of changed the partner program around. There was a point in the past where the Microsoft licensing price went up a little bit, and we had no choice, right? Because we did originally bundle it. And if Microsoft does a mid-year price increase in say May or June or whatever, because their fiscal years ends June and July, or May and June or whatever it is, our contracts are annual based, right? So
Right.
you get in that weird space where you're like, well, how do I handle that? Well, you eat it, right? You eat it. And so, you know, it's a cost of doing business, right? Unforeseen supply chain, blah, blah, blah. Now I've got to, spend some more. And the problem is, as MSPs, and not afraid to admit it, you get into that situation where you forget, and December rolls around and you're like, oh, we should go raise our rates, and we didn't have, we only have 3% in our MSA, but we need 5, so then things get weird, right?
Right.
And so you avoid that. It's just a human thing. You avoid the weird conversations. But yeah, ultimately what we did is we shifted tool costs from an expense of ours to an expense for our customers. And so they're essentially paying for those. And the biggest, the sort of the next tertiary benefit is at the peak when we had all of the nasty, not all vendors suck, just the vast majority. But we were more beholden to the people that were selling us licenses than we were to our customers. And
Yeah.
and that was really the wake up call.
Yeah. I mean, that makes complete sense. We got a couple questions. I'm going to put one on the screen here, though. So we have D365 Business Central for the partner benefits. Would this include everything we need to get off the ground running with it?
100%. This actually includes not just what you need for sales motion, customer service motion, but Business Central also includes invoicing, so it can replace QuickBooks. So you can integrate a billing platform like a processing platform like Stripe, and you can literally invoice, collect payment, all of that with Business Central. Business Central is essentially what we would refer to as an ERP, enterprise resource planning, for a small business. So it encompasses a CRM component, which would be the sales module. It encompasses a customer service component, which would be your case or ticket management. And you have full access to the Power Platform with that. All your data is stored in Dataverse. You have access to all your Microsoft 365, whatever's in SharePoint, whatever's in Teams, whatever's in your Microsoft Calendar, whatever's in your email. You can layer Copilot on top of that. There's Copilot tools built into Business Central already. Yeah, Business Central is extremely powerful and super flexible, right? Like, again, if you want to do something that's unique to your company, you can pop open Power Automate, and you can build a flow that there are 20,000, I don't know, there's a bazillion connectors that are first person connectors. I've recently heard people talk about Power Automate and be like, well, I don't understand why it exists because I hate it. But that's the opinion of people from 10 years ago, right? And so,
Yeah.
and the beauty is you can get as technical as you need. You can get over into Azure. You can get over Azure Functions. So we have some integrations that we built specifically that pull our Microsoft, through Partner Center and our delegated admin access to our customer's tenant. We synchronize accounts and employee for onboarding, offboarding. We synchronize that into Dynamics, so we can see all of the client's information, and right there in Dynamics, we don't have to go into a Partner Center to do some of those changes. So, and then we can tie that in onboarding and offboarding automations for client employees, because we're tied in with our distributor. Our distributor also has an open API for us to be able to increment and decrement licenses. And so that process is very streamlined and automated as well. That's sort of the beauty of it, is we don't have to have, using Dynamics, you start with Business Central, you can grow into the individual modules, but you don't have to have another add-on every time you want to do something different. That is sort of the key to me, is that, I talked, listen to podcasts, talk to people, at a conference. I joke around that like in my brain, the what's on replay is Dynamics does that, or Defender does that. People always talk about like, oh, well, we bought this tool to do da da da, and I'm like, oh, well, your client's already got that license. You can do that with. So anyway, yes, you have everything you need. You just got to do it.
Yeah, he said, can you review same follow-up question? Can you review the extra D365
Yeah.
modules that we get with the expanded benefits
Let me pull
over
up
the
that.
first 2 tiers?
Let me pull up that slide. So if you go to partner.microsoft.com, if you are already a partner, you just log into your partner dashboard. There's a button that says benefits. You just click on that, and it outlines sort of all this stuff. There's a PDF that they Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Benefits. It's, I don't know, it's like 30 or 40 pages. It's a little bit like, and I know people are, oh, thanks, Steve. He put a link in the chat. But essentially, so
Yeah.
launch benefits are here on the left. And again, I'm only highlighting what you get from the standpoint of Dynamics Power Platform. And so the ones with asterisks are new for 2025. And so some folks might still be writing out an action pack subscription. They can't renew or buy a new one, but it might still be active from last year, right? So you're not going to get these benefits yet until you purchase one of these 3 bundles. And spoiler alert, launch benefits are cheaper than the action pack was. And so Microsoft did a nice thing for us there in that. But you get 4 licenses of Business Central, and then you also get Dynamics 365 Sales Enterprise. You can use them together. There's in the Power Platform, the Dataverse is where all this data gets stored in the back. They have what's called dual write, and so you can use Business Central and an Enterprise Dynamics product together, and your data can be in both of them. But and then another one that's really powerful is you get the Power BI premium license, but the Power Automate. As you go up the tier, a company, if you've got a help desk with 10 or 15 technicians, you get into those expanded benefits, and I mean that is some significant money that you get. You're paying, I think the expanded side is like $3,500 annually, and that list of what you get from Dynamics is tens of thousands of dollars in licensing. So pretty intense.
Here you go. Based on what you've shifted to MS, what is the base license for your clients, and what does that help?
So one of the second big inflection point with Microsoft was when they went to NCE, right? So we had the CSP transition, the cloud service partner transition first, and then we had the new commerce experience transition, which was a couple of years ago. And some people are probably still dealing with the tail end of that transition. That was when we saw that, we had that first writing on the wall was the first transition, because again, we at that point we unbundled, right? And what we did, and that was actually, so listen closely, if you have Microsoft licensing in your service bundle, you take it out, no one will ever fight you on that. You just say, in fact, we sent a letter to everybody and was like, because of Microsoft's yada, yada, whatever, we are going to separate your Microsoft licensing. All of our customers get 2 invoices. They get one invoice that is our services, which is a managed services SKU. And then they get a Microsoft licensing invoice. And so at first, the reason we bundled was because it's like a chocolate cake thing, right? You're like, I'm going to not tell you the ingredients. I'm just going to feed you this yummy, yummy cake. And so we would hide what license they had. If they were smart, they could go digging at, one of the company admins could go digging and find out what licenses they had. But essentially that sort of transition was around Microsoft 365, when it went from Office 365 to Microsoft 365. And that is where it became essentially feasible to manage your whole technology infrastructure with Microsoft, because the Microsoft 365 license gave you all of the security features, right? It gave you what Azure AD back then, Enter ID now, and it gave you the endpoint management with Intune, and it gave you the new security tools with Defender, right? Defender for small business, Defender for enterprise, depending on what SKU. So we leaned into that very heavily, and we have essentially created 3 tiers, because we have this challenge where people are like, well, we've got, yesterday I was having coffee with someone that owns 7 restaurants, and they're like, well, how much am I going to have to pay? Because I've got like, 150 employees that just use their phone to clock in and out and read some emails. So Microsoft has this beautiful license called Frontline, and it is exactly for that purpose, right? It's an employee. They still have an identity that they need to manage, and they have an identity that we need to secure. And so we have a Frontline license, F3, and then we sell what we call a limited subscription, a service subscription, and that is our support services, our security services for that type of an employee. So those sort of match together. And then we have what we call our standard, and that is like 80% of all employees that sit at a desk use Microsoft Office. They get a business premium, Microsoft 365 business premium. That gives us all device management, that gives us all security. And then what we do for our executives, anyone in the C-suite, anyone that has access to managing cash, paying bills, those types of things, we insist that those people get an advanced license from Microsoft. We use the E5 for that, Microsoft 365 E5. And yeah, it's a little expensive as a license, but so is all of the risk associated with what those people come across every day of their lives. So never really got any pushback on that. The average company has between 5 and 10 executives, so it's not so onerous and so expensive if you wanted to try to do like E5 across the board. But yeah, so ultimately that's sort of 90% of our clients live in that zone, right? And then everyone's unique, right? We got some people that adopted Copilot really fast, so they got Copilot licensing in there, but that gives us the flexibility to do that, right? If someone wants to start using Dynamics, we have a lot of nonprofits, the Power Platform, there's a bunch of templates. There's a nonprofit cloud, Microsoft Cloud for nonprofits. There's a Microsoft Cloud for healthcare. So if you've got any of these interesting verticals, there's a bunch of add-ons. And because we don't have to create a weird bundle to try to include that. But when we disconnected those, that was our first profit increase without having to go renegotiate a contract. Because when you take the Microsoft licensing out and you make them pay for it, if that accounted for 15% of what that bundle was, then now you've just increased your revenue by 15%. So
yeah, there's this comment right here from Abby there that's talking about, I mean, more like WTF is finance if BCP replaces QuickBooks or Team Member Enterprise. I assume that has to do with, yeah.
On the small business side, I mean, look, at the end of the day, QuickBooks, Xero, they're not advanced products, right? It's double entry accounting. I've got an expense and I've got revenue, and I've got to put them together. I got to, credits and debits. Business Central can do that quite well. And that's sort of the beauty of that flow, right? Because I'll tell you what, over the years that I spent in peer groups, I think the number one challenge that people always had was, we're trying to fix our billing. We're trying to integrate QuickBooks. We're trying to, it was always billing problems. Why aren't you, we can't raise our rates because we can't send out invoices, it was, but anyway, yeah. So that's super powerful. You can get more advanced where you get down the road, and you can automate all kinds of stuff with Dynamics on the invoicing side. We call out to Stripe. We use Stripe for our credit card processing. So, and then, we use ACH at our local bank. Everyone's on ACH or credit card, auto pay. Money just shows up in our accounts. It's kind of magical.
Well, just got about a minute left, but I know that you wanted to talk about the podcasts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're starting. My illustrious presenter, organizer for Empath here, Bob Miller, is one of my co-hosts, and then Stephen Kellogg, who's in the chat, so the three of us have started a podcast. It's called Digital Descent, and we're essentially highlighting sort of how we believe that the status quo, conversations people don't necessarily have, and then true innovation. It's really important for us to highlight true innovation in the MSSP channel. And so we're talking with folks that are building products, the good vendors. So just look for that. We got our first official episode dropping within the next week.
Very good. Well, Derek, I want to thank you, man. It was it's always good. We hang out a lot together, but I'm glad that people get to see, I've learned a ton from you over the last year or so, and we basically met, you, Stephen, and I met in the community part of Empath. about 2 years ago. So, we've known each other for quite a while, but it's been interesting how how it's evolved over time. So it's been really cool to get to know you, but it's been great. I learned a lot from you. So I'm glad other people are getting a chance to kind of see your perspective on this thing because it is unique. So I want to thank everybody for showing up. And you got about 5 minutes to run over, check out the booths a little bit, and then join up for the final keynote on the way out of here. So thanks everybody, and see you in the next session. Again,
And
Derek,
one
thanks a
last
ton.
quick little
Go
thing.
ahead.
Yes, there are a
Sure.
bunch of apps. Just pick one that makes the most sense for you to start with. Don't boil the ocean. You don't have to recreate everything overnight.
There you go. All right. See everybody later. Thanks for coming. Talk to you guys later.